a very musically inclined, very creative, very artistic friend. Knowing him from high school, thought it'd be a great conversation to bring him on the pod and just to talk about, some of the things that he's been doing.
From there, I would go on to the Peabody Institute of Johns Hopkins University, where I would achieve a Master of Music with a focus on performance. My instrument is piano. And from there, I would go on to achieve a Doctor of Musical Arts degree. I'm happy to say that I was the first in the nation to achieve a Doctor of Music in any area. And a word that I like to describe myself as an interdisciplinarian, where I really am equally as interested in the performance aspects as I am with the way that music connects beyond just entertainment. She told me when she was pregnant with me that she prayed that our house be filled with music. And so I was the answer to her prayer. And she would always remind me of that when I was struggling with some of the difficulties of developing as a musician.
Sure. All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the new episode of the Myles High Podcast. This is Myles Jr., your host. And as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right. Got a special pod today. Here with a friend of mine, a very musically inclined, very creative, very artistic friend. Knowing him from high school, thought it'd be a great conversation to bring him on the pod and just to talk about, some of the things that he's been doing. So I want to welcome to the pod, Mr. Dion Cunningham. Sorry, I don't want to disrespect you. Dr. Dion Cunningham. Let's clap him up, guys. Dion, welcome, man. Welcome to the pod. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you agreeing to be here, man.
It's a pleasure to be here. I follow the pod. You're doing amazing work. Keep it up.
Appreciate it. So, man, we've talked offline. Really intrigued by the work that you're doing, especially with the profession that you're in. And I just thought it'd make for a great conversation. So I want to start with just kind of introducing you to the audience, right? So tell us, obviously you're from the Bahamas, but, let us know where you went to school for high school, and then, your college or collegiate education background, and then a little bit about your profession or how you got into, or what you got into, I should say, after you graduated from college.
All right. So, hello, everybody. So, I'm Dion. Anybody who can call me by my first name has known me for a long time, so don't feel no kind of way about the whole doctor thing.
Yeah.
It's like Charo, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, great. So I am the eldest son of Dion and Edris Cunningham. Many of you will know him as Bishop Dr. Dion Cunningham and Edris Cunningham, and I have one younger brother, Dominic. Grew up in Nassau. I live in the East, Yamakura area. I went to primary school, graduated from Talma Gibson Primary in Elizabeth Estates. And for high school, I went to St. Augustine's College. And yeah, from there, I went on to study at McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I would study biology, was my initial major, and then I would also add the music major a little bit later. But the goal was really to go on to medical school. What I can say as a Cliff Notes version is that a series of events happened, ended up going back to school for a music education degree while also studying at the College of the Bahamas, then College of the Bahamas. So I would have received my diploma in education from the college, and also a couple of years later, a Master of Music Education from Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. From there, I would go on to the Peabody Institute of Johns Hopkins University, where I would achieve a Master of Music with a focus on performance. My instrument is piano. And from there, I would go on to achieve a Doctor of Musical Arts degree. And happy to say that I was the first in the nation to achieve a doctor of music in any area. And so that occurred 5 years ago. And since then, I've been enjoying a multifaceted career as a musician, as an educator, and a word that I like to describe myself as an interdisciplinarian, where I really am more interested, equally as interested in the performance aspects as I am with the way that music connects beyond just entertainment.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that, because I think that's an interesting way to look at music, especially. But I want to talk about your educational choice first, or your studies of choice. So you initially went with biology,
yeah,
right? Wanted to be a doctor. Was there any particular type of doctor you wanted to be when you were younger?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was always interested in neurology,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was something that I was interested in. And that interest came about when I was in high school. And this is about the time where, you have those conversations with family, with friends, with mentors, and everybody's encouraging you. You're very smart. I was always an honor roll student.
Dion been a brain from long time. You know what I mean? From a brain from long time. I think it was inevitable you was going to take this path. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, and so I decided, okay, this would be a good way to use the natural academic ability that I had
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But I always had music as a love, and I would dare say as a passion.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I would participate in whatever musical events, and that looks like, you play in church, but also you participate in things like the National Arts Festival and the few competitions or platforms that were available to high school students. I would also take advantage of those as well. So I knew that music would always be a part of my life. I loved expressing myself through the piano, but you want to always, as a Bahamian, so I was told, do the pragmatic thing. And what do I mean by that? You need to do something that you can actually make an income from. And so I said, well, music will be the hobby, but medicine will be the income, the economic side of things.
So did you like medicine at that time, like early on?
Oh,
or was it just a choice to be like, all right, this a profession I want to choose so I could make a living?
That's a good question. I would say that I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I would not say that I had a passion for it, but I was good at it. I think that's the important thing to say. Sometimes many of us make decisions in our lives not because we like something, but because we're good at it.
Skilled at it,
And
yeah.
it will, and more importantly, people understand its innate value and are willing to pay dollars for it. And so that kind of led to that decision.
So tell me about the process now where you decided to study biology, or pre-med, to want to be a doctor, and then the transition that you had to be like, no, this pre-med thing, this biology thing ain't for me. I love music. I've been running from it for these last couple of years. I want to dive into it now and make it the main thing that I'm studying.
So I have to blame my mother for this, because the confusion that I have is the same confusion that she had. Now, what do I mean by that? My mother, actually, a lot of people don't know, was a biology teacher. And so a lot of my love for the scientists came from her. But I say I blame her because she told me when she was pregnant with me that she prayed that our house be filled with music. And so I was the answer to her prayer. And she would always remind me of that when I was struggling with some of the difficulties of developing as a musician.
Sure.
So that's one side of the context. The other side of it is that I had a wonderful teacher growing up here. Her name is Dawn Sands. She doesn't teach anymore, but she was a wonderful inspiration for me. And actually, the part that I want everybody to know that I was her first piano student. She was never a teacher, was never trained as a teacher. She immigrated to the Bahamas, married a Bahamian. She's from Canada, and she played one Sunday at, I think it was Blue Hole Gospel Chapel, and she played this amazing piece. And my mother, being the go-getter that she was, she said, "You're gonna be my son's teacher." And Miss Sands was like, this is not, I don't really teach. And my mother was persistent, and I ended up being her first student. And I credit Dawn Sands for really helping to shape the musical experiences that I had growing up in the Bahamas from the age of 6 all the way through 18. I will also go on and say that once I left for college, so the love of music was there and really instilled by her.
Why not choose music after you graduate high school to study in college?
Man, I thought I just answered. No, I'm just playing. So
I guess
there are many of us that have to make choices. We're led to believe that we need to make choices based on
what society determines or parents determine.
But it's not even society, Jaro. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. It's economics.
Uh-huh. But then you get that economics from what you've been learning and been trained to think. Like you got to make a living.
Exactly.
Music to pay as much. So
it's
you
not.
Got to find something that works.
It could be your hobby. It could be your ministry. Yep. Don't make it your profession.
So I don't put no one on blast, right? But where did you get that pushback from the most? Was it like in the home? Was it at school? Was it amongst friends? Was it family members? Or was it a combination of everything?
All of the above.
Got you.
All of the above, especially with my academic leanings and just being
a brain.
I worked hard. I tell people they don't believe me, but I said if I don't study, I can fail just like everybody else.
You don't have to work as hard as the average person. Okay, it's okay. It's all right.
Fair enough. But I guess what I will say is that I won't put the blame totally on wider society or those in my circles, but I would say that, listen, I could see. And I knew enough musicians in this town to know that it was difficult.
Sure.
And I think the thing to say about it is that it remains difficult, even at this point.
Absolutely.
So I made the choice that when I filled out that college application, it's going to be sciences. And I think the other reason I did that as well, and I think this might speak to some people, I didn't want to develop a hatred for music because I wasn't good enough to make a career from it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I wanted my love and my passion for music to always remain pure. And so for me, I was also making it for that reason. I could do this medical thing over here, but when I'm at home or when I'm at church or whether I'm in the wider community, I can do this thing that I love, and it's not tied to my sense of identity, professional identity, that is. And if I can't make an income, that speaks to the quality of musician or artist that I am. So
let's talk about that point now where you did biology for 2 years, I think you said.
2 years.
And then you made the decision to say, all right, I'm gonna do music now.
So I met a professor at McAllister. His name was also Don, but a male, Don Betts. And elderly gentleman. He was already in his 70s by the time I went to him, and he really gave me a love for the piano specifically. Whereas Dawn Sands gave me a love for music in a more general sense, even though she was a pianist. Dawn really gave me a love for the piano.
Was the piano your focus before you met him? Like, was it more of your favorite instrument at the time?
Yeah. And I play other instruments. I can play violin, I can play cello and others, but piano was the instrument that I was able to make the most progress because I was being deliberately trained by Dawn Sands. And so once I went abroad and I met Dawn, so here's what I will say. Growing up, I didn't always have access to a piano. And what do I mean by that? There is a difference between a keyboard and a piano. I didn't really understand that until I went abroad. And then there were all these 9-foot, 6-foot, 7-foot Steinways. And then I realized, wow, this instrument is heavy. This instrument they're pedals. I have to be able to manipulate these things. And so it wasn't until I got to college that I realized I didn't really know how to play the piano, which is crazy. And so he did a lot of work with me to get me up to a standard where by the time I left him, I was playing better than anybody in the department. And even it's funny that the chair of the department, when I was graduating, she said, and I'd received awards at graduation for music, but she said, "Are you seriously going to study the sciences?" And she simply said, "We will see." And so I left Dawn, I left the music department, with that kind of seed planted, but recognizing that, hey, I'm going to come back home. I was exhausted after undergrad, taking 4 years to study 2 degrees, and I said, well, I'm going to come home, relax, maybe do some teaching.
So you finished
return.
your musical degree in 2 years, right?
I finished my musical degree in 2 years.
Was that
Yeah.
was it structured like that, or did you pack 4 years into those 2 years?
No, I worked hard. I did what I had to do. I pushed one thing.
So you studied 2 4-year degrees in 4 years.
That's correct.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And by choice.
Yeah, no one was pushing me to do it. It's just it was Dawn's encouragement and recognizing that, hey, I could still be better as a musician, even though
dope.
I was still, and this is the important thing to say, I had no intention on pursuing music as a career, even after having a bachelor's degree.
Got you.
But the joke was on me because when I came home, and this maybe is jumping ahead a little bit.
Go ahead.
I applied. A couple of weird things happened. The Ministry of Education, I said, okay, I want to teach for 1 year, so let me go to the Ministry of Education. I got 2 bachelor's degrees, but I want to, let me offer myself as a biology teacher. And I went to the Ministry of Education, and a weird thing happened, and maybe this has not happened since. The ministry refused to hire me.
Wow.
They refused flat out. They said, no, we're not taking you on. So I ended up going to Kingsway Academy and applying for a job, and I went there, and they hired me as a biology teacher. They called me back 2 weeks later. They said, we decided not to go that direction. So already I had 2 no's in the sciences, even though it was in medical school. It was in science adjacent as a teacher. But they said, we noticed you have a music degree. Would you consider teaching music? And Charles, I said, and I looked up to the heavens. I said, God, you know I don't want to do this.
Say, ain't no way.
I don't want to do this because I knew enough that music teachers, they're the lowest paid on the totem pole, and you get work like a dog.
Sure.
Because unlike, and no disrespect to any other teacher, a music teacher has 2 jobs. You have to teach the classes, and you have to make the school look good. And unlike coaches who coach sports, we don't get remuneration for that, which is why to this day, and I could say this as somebody that works at the university, listen, it's hard to get more than 1 or 2 teachers a year graduating as music teachers from the education program. So, yeah. Wow. But I say all that to say, God obviously was pushing me in this direction, and 1 year ended up being many years later, and I sit before you.
Still teaching
yeah,
music.
still teaching.
That's dope, man. That's dope. Yeah. And, it's always crazy to me how, we start out in life with a plan, right? I want to be a doctor, so I'm going to do pre-med, study biology. And then the doors in the direction that we want to go just shut, right? There's no explanation for it. And like, I'm not qualified. It's not like I shouldn't get these opportunities. But then, there's that shift, and it naturally goes to the path that we should take. Like those doors open, they tend to open more readily and more frequently and more easily, right? Than those other doors. So it's just crazy how life just happens the way that it should. Even when we still don't think like it still can't be what I supposed to do, right? Because this ain't gonna make me no money. I try to build a living, have a living for myself, and this career path that is a hobby of mine, right? I ain't considering to making it a professional career, but it just doesn't pay. But things didn't work out, right? So now you got into teaching, but then you went off to do your master's, right? So and you didn't just go off to any school to do your master's. You went off to one of the most prestigious schools in the U.S. Tell us about how that journey happened. How did you get into that university?
So this is a story in itself. The other piece of the journey that I want to mention is the fact that while I was here teaching, I met His name is Eldridge McPhee. He's a choral director for a group called the Bel Canto Singers. It was that group that I credit with getting me back into playing seriously again. Because like I said, I graduated from McAllister, played all these amazing recitals, but the flip side to teaching is your life as a performer kind of suffers because it all becomes about teaching. But the Bel Canto Singers really helped me to keep sharp as a performing musician and pianist, and I will always be grateful for that opportunity. But during one of their concerts, I met a great lady who was a guest artist at one of their spring concerts. Her name was Carmen Balthrop, and she was a professor from the University of Maryland. And I had to accompany her, and this ridiculous contemporary 20th century cantata for voice and piano. And we had a successful concert, and she said to me, "Dion, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm teaching." She said, No, that's not what I mean. Why are you here on this island with this amount of talent? She said, "You need to keep on studying." The next month, I was at her home in Maryland with her and Patrick Delaney. Patrick Delaney is a Bahamian, actually. So while Carmen is not Bahamian, she's American. Patrick was Bahamian, and so I guess he must have vouched for me as a Bahamian. Said, "Oh, he good. He could come stay with us for a month." And during that visit, I visited two schools, Peabody Institute and the University of Maryland. And as fate would have it, as God would divinely ordain it, it was those two schools that I would pursue my master's and my doctoral studies. And so the audition process, I decided I would take a year off from teaching to just focus on performing and playing and getting myself ready for the auditions. And I think there were 400 pianists that apply for 40 positions.
Oh, wow.
So it's 10%. And thankfully, I was one of the 40. And
on the first go.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And I didn't expect it, because you're sitting out there and you're hearing all of these Asian and Russian and American pianists. They're all there, and they're all of a lighter hue. And then I walk in there, and I said, "Oh my God."
Were you the only black guy?
I was the only black person.
Wow.
And as a feature of my education, anytime I continued my education, I was always the only black person.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so I got one of those 40 spots, and I had 2 wonderful years at Peabody studying with Marion Hahn, wonderful professor who continues to be an inspiration and a mentor to me to this day.
That's dope, man. That's dope.
Yeah.
And then you went on to do your doctorate.
Yep.
Right.
See, Carmen had a plan. Carmen Balthrop, who I did the concert with, she had a plan for me to study at the University of Maryland. But as God would have it, he said, "Okay, I'm going to delay that. You're going to Peabody first. Which is a more prestigious school. To be honest, it's the oldest conservatory in the United States, and I had some catching up to do there as well. But by the time I graduated, they gave 5 awards out to pianists, and I got one of those awards. So it was an amazing experience, wonderful educational opportunities, performing opportunity, not just at the school, but around the city. I got to play at Kennedy Center in DC, did concerts at the Meyerhoff, which is the main space for the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Just amazing experiences. And then I would go on to University of Maryland.
So University of Maryland to do your doctorate.
Yeah.
And you went to do your doctorate in music, right?
Yeah, it's called the Doctor of Musical Arts degree.
Doctor of Musical Arts degree.
Yeah.
But your dissertation, it interests me because you blended your history and biology with music. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I won't get it. All I will say is there were a series of events at the University of Maryland that kind of forced me to make a different decision in terms of my trajectory for the latter half or the last half of my degree. So you do 2 years of coursework, you perform recitals, and then you get to that point where you have the candidacy exams, and you do 2 8-hour exams and handwritten. So I got through that, praise God, and then the opportunity was so you could either play 3 additional recitals and write a research paper on some musicological aspect, or you could do a recording or, which nobody ever does, write a full dissertation and do one more recital.
So hold on. You had an option to not do a dissertation.
Yeah.
And you chose to do the dissertation.
Yeah, that's correct.
And was it because like you wanted to challenge yourself, or
No.
it was just like, did that truly interest you?
No, this is a story in itself as well. During my second year in my PhD program, so the way that I paid for school, and I think I should go back here because I don't want people to think that
You had all this money.
I got all the scholarship opportunity. It wasn't the case at all. When I was at McAllister, I had 4 jobs, not one, 4 jobs to get through undergrad. While I was a student at Peabody, I also taught middle school in West Baltimore. Rough neighborhoods, rough kids. Let me tell you, I don't care what any educator tells you, our kids are saints compared to those kids that I had to deal with in West Baltimore.
Oh, man.
So I was teaching, while my colleagues were having fun, I was teaching middle school, and I had to fit that in. Thankfully, I had that opportunity. And then when I was at the University of Maryland, my job, while everybody else got teaching, and one would think, oh, you've been teaching in the Bahamas, you should get a teaching assistantship. Oh, no. No. You're going to tune and do piano maintenance for 20 hours a week.
Wow.
And so I was working while, in fact, it's so funny. So many of my colleagues and friends at the school, they said, we didn't realize you were a student here. We thought you just worked here.
Wow. That's how much hours you put in.
That's how much hours I was putting in, aside from being black.
Yeah.
And it's the truth.
Now that you say it,
yeah. So
you're the help.
Yeah. So I dealt with all of that.
Oh man.
But the thing I'm getting to the point.
Yeah.
During my second year, with all of this physical stress that I was doing with the maintenance of piano, lifting a lot of these things, I was diagnosed with a condition called ulnar nerve compression, cubital tunnel syndrome, which is a basically what happened was the nerve that runs through my elbow was damaged, and I lost control of my 3rd, 4th, and 5th fingers. And so thankfully through a year of therapy, a couple of years of therapy, I was able to get over that injury.
How did you damage the nerve?
From the job.
Oh, really?
From the job. So when you're tuning and fixing, you have to use your elbow as a pivot, and you're putting a lot of pressure on that elbow. So, and for most people, they don't care. Sure. But as a pianist, where you need all 10 of your fingers to be at a high level of functioning, it was kind of a disaster for me, which meant I could not go the recital route. So that's part of why that happened that way. And then of course the recording, well, you got to have all 10 of your fingers working.
So at the time, all those 3 fingers weren't working?
No, but I still had to play one recital.
Wow.
So I prayed, I said, God, get me through this one recital. And he did. It was some of the best playing I'd ever done. But I didn't want to go around that mountain 2 more times. So what it did was that it caused me to think about, okay, what is going on in my body as it relates to how one plays piano. And so I ended up meeting Dr. Jay Shim, who, remember I told you that I was thinking neurology for medical school. He was the head of the neuromechanics research core at the University of Maryland in the School of Public Health. And so he helped me to shape my ideas around instrumental performance and human neuromechanics. And what that basically in a nutshell is about is how instrumental performance intersects with the neurological, skeletal, muscular, neurological systems of the body.
Playing instruments.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes, instrumental performance.
Yes.
And it's so interesting because there are so many ways in which those, at the end of the day, here's what I will say. Those that play instruments, their neurological systems develop differently from those that don't.
That's what I was getting at when I asked, because that means there's a distinction between musical artists or musicians than like the regular person that doesn't use that part of their skills or their body.
Right. So for instance, a musician is always going to have a higher level of fine motor control skills than the general public.
Sure.
the hemispheres of the brain of a musician are going to be more connected and integrated.
Sure.
And this is not something that is creative. It's something that's actually physical. You could actually take the brain of a musician and you can know it's a musician based on how connected the hemispheres are. And then for me, what was really interesting about what I was really interested in was how I could help the next generation of musicians, number one, to prevent injuries. Because a lot of even though my injury didn't occur as a result of playing, a lot of my colleagues were suffering from injuries of a similar type because of the way that they were using their bodies. And so for me, the question was, how can I help other musicians to use their bodies in a more efficient way so that, number one, technically they become superior, which is... Yeah, so technically they become more superior as musicians, which interestingly enough, one of the things that a lot of musicians don't like when I say this, I said musical talent is physical talent. If you develop a finer or a larger movement vocabulary, you automatically can be more musical. It has nothing to do with any sort of cerebral creativity. It all boils down to movement.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, and then so being able to play better and how do we prevent injury? And so that was
the basis of your dissertation.
That was the basis of my dissertation.
But it came from a personal issue that you were dealing with.
Absolutely.
That's interesting, bro. And how did it go? Like, I mean, obviously you passed and it was well received, but
yeah,
anything beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time at the University of Maryland that the chair, because in dissertations you usually have a chair of the committee,
sure,
and the chair usually comes from the music department. Well, because I was operating outside of the expertise of anybody in the music department, my chair had to come from my advisor, Jay Shim, which was a bit of a political thing.
Sure.
They say, okay, you done black, you done the help, like, and now you're trying to do something that we can't even really critique because they don't have the expertise to deal with it. So I was, but I was thankful for that experience, and my interest continues to be how we can really develop the tools that musicians need in order to, number one, learn instruments better, but also prevent injuries, but also really, and this is really my passion, really preaching, I don't want to be a heretic here, preaching the gospel of music to a wider population, understanding that its value goes beyond a party.
Sure.
It goes beyond the church service. It goes beyond, the public function. To be interested in musical development is to be interested in your own development as a person. I'm passionate about that, and it's not, while it is cerebral and creative, it's also very much physical. And so if there's a message I could share with parents out there, I don't know if they're going to be listening to this. If you care about the development of your child, you need to give them a musical experience. Those fine motor skills that you expect them to develop in handwriting or painting or their ability to just coordinate are only really developed in a few disciplines. And music remains ground zero for that, particularly through instrumental performance.
So it helps with development. Oh, it plays a big part in development.
Yeah, it's critical to neurological development.
Yeah. No, that's dope. So, after you graduated, well, you were already teaching before you went to do your doctorate or even to do your master's. And then you got back into teaching. And you've taught, you mentioned you taught some kids in West Baltimore, which, we
don't have time to get into those stories.
But I wanna know, like, just quickly, right? Your teaching history, right? On your experience, has it been a good one, a positive one? How did you deal with the challenges that you face as a teacher? Because I'm sure you've taught like kids from different backgrounds, different communities with different experiences. How did you maneuver and manage through, the different kids that you had to come into contact with?
I would say in every position without fail, whether you're talking about West Baltimore, and I've had the chance to teach at even international schools. When I say international schools, you have like the International Baccalaureate Program or AP, schools that focus on AP. I've taught them all. The teaching is the best part. Kids are kids, regardless of whether they are kindergartners or whether they're 12th graders. I know there's a message out there that says, man, I'd never teach junior high school or high school. How do you deal with the attitudes and stuff? I guess on one level, I'm fortunate because music plays such a pivotal role in the development, going back to development
Sure.
of teenagers, that I don't have to sell them on the value of my subject.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So they come into my class and I shape the experience in such a way that they understand not only the technical aspects of music, but they understand why, how it plays out in their own existence.
Sure.
Which is also a very heavy responsibility, because a certain teacher could shape the experience in a way that is not so positive, but I've been fortunate in that way. I've always had more difficulty with administration.
Wow.
I'm just going to put
the
that out
kids.
there, and I'm not going to call no schools names. I'm just going to say administration has always been
So you have
more of the challenge.
You have more issues with the adults than the kids.
Yeah.
That only makes sense.
And even
though.
parents, I've not really had issues with parents,
Sure.
but it's always administrators.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I read somewhere where you said that through your journey, your biggest challenge was the struggles that you had with identity, and then the challenges you had post education with all the failures that you might have experienced. I wanted to talk about both of them, right? So we could start with the challenges that you had with identity. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So I'll try to comment on that in a few different dimensions. So as a child, one's identity is tied initially to one's family. And while many children in our community may grow up with families that that kind of fly under the radar, so to speak, not so much out there in the community, I didn't have that privilege.
Oh.
So
Welcome to the party.
yeah,
bud.
yeah. I preach into the choir. here.
Welcome to the party.
I didn't have that privilege. So a lot of my childhood was struggling with, I can't think of another way to say it except to say the threat of my parents. And not that my parents
Was
were the
threatening you.
problem,
Yep.
but it's
everyone
just
else around you. Expectations.
Dion Cunningham.
Yep.
I know your father. I know your mother. I expect better of you.
Absolutely.
And you're hearing that all the time as a child. So that was one. So sometimes I think back on my childhood. I said, boy, and I haven't come up with an answer to this. Maybe we should have a separate conversation. Like, okay, did I really have a freedom as a child? I don't know the answer to that question. But that's one level. But you didn't ask that question.
No, I got you.
But
It's a part of it,
But
though.
that's one element.
Yep.
Then, primary school was good because my primary school kind of resonated with my natural interests. Talma Gibson was a very rich cultural background, and while I give Dawn Sands credit for my musical upbringing, I did have a wonderful teacher. Her name was Mrs. Mortimer, who kind of gave me that. So I learned about ring play and Bahamian music and Bahamian culture. And so she gave me a wonderful background. When I got to high school, on the other hand, none of that really existed at my high school. I hope it's changing. I hope. Because, but what I will say is that my personal interests did not necessarily resonate with not only my classmates, but with the culture of the school at that time.
And the culture of our country at the time. I mean, from a generational perspective, like our generation growing up in that time, like that interest like in music or music education wasn't wasn't big, wasn't prevalent at all.
No, definitely. And so for me, how do I? So the struggle and the teenage years are critical, because that's when your identity is shaped. And so the struggle that I had was, do I conform to the environment around me, or do I figure out a way to protect this aspect, this critical part of who I am as a person? The academic side was fed at my high school, but the artistic side, it wasn't. And so this is totally antisocial, right? But I had to do things like, so lunchtime, everybody is cafeteria. I would walk up to St. Mary's Hall, which is kind of far away from where the cafeteria was, but every person from SAC knows what that is. I would walk up and I would spend most of my lunchtimes where the piano was, and I'd just play and just kind of continue to develop that side of myself. Now that's just an example of how I would try to protect that, but it was difficult. I'm not going to say that it was easy. Yeah, and so protecting that was a challenge throughout high school, but it was only by 11th grade, and you find yourself, and then I decided, you know what, I have to be who I am. I can't try to be a sports person, try to be it was too much, and so I guess by 11th grade I finally had the courage to just spread my wings.
How old were you in grade 11?
Probably 16, 15 going on 16.
Yeah, because that's when it happened for me too.
Yeah,
like getting up to 15, I was like, okay, let me try and do what everyone else wanted me to do. But at 15, I can remember saying like, bro, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
like,
whatever.
I gotta do what I love.
Hey, yeah. There's a musical, The Greatest Showman. The song that's called "This Is Me." I wish it were out when I was a high school student, but that kind of deciding that this is who I am, and I'm just going to be who it is, and embrace the fullness of who I've been created to be. So that was my struggles with identity. And then, I guess, professionally speaking, as a musician, and it's still a struggle. Yes, even after all of the education and experiences, one of the things I struggle with is how to... Certain professions, you do not have to communicate the value of the profession.
Sure.
But I always find myself in situations where I have to justify the value of what it is that I do. And so that's always a struggle. But and it's a struggle for me particularly because I don't necessarily use words. I'm not a singer. I let the sounds of the instrument really do the work for me. But in this society, I've had to get better at communicating the value and really making the case, particularly for non-musical reasons, that why music is and the arts are so valuable.
So talk to me about your failures, though, your post-academic failures. Because I want you to pinpoint maybe like one or two of them that you like maybe what you would consider like your most impacting failures, or those times where you didn't achieve the mark that you had set out to achieve. Like what were those? How did they affect you? How did you bounce back?
Okay. Failures. So I'm going to go back to the audition process, getting into Peabody. The thing that I forgot to mention was that I had done 3 auditions up to that point, and I wasn't successful in any of them. And so Peabody, I thought, okay, did I really hear from God? Is this really what you want me to do? And this is the hardest school. But I guess in some ways, one could say, oh, the experiences of those auditions helped me to be ready for this particular moment. And so, yeah, those failures and all previous auditions really prepared me for that.
Hey, this thing about this podcast, we just be reiterating all of these facts. I just be spitting because it's life, bro.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And then even when I was in my doctoral studies, you have to do these things called hearings before they allow you to do recitals. And I remember the first recital hearing that I did, I failed. I failed that.
Oh, wow.
And so, and what the faculty was clear to tell me at the time was that if you fail a second hearing, you're out of the PhD program.
Wow.
And so the pressure was on.
Yeah.
And remember, I wasn't just someone who was a student and could spend I was working. Peabody, I was working. And so the stress of that was, I would I go back to those days? No. But I'm so thankful for them because they've helped to shape me. And I would pinpoint those two failures as critical.
No, but I mean, like you said, I think failures prepare us for, that next test, the next step, the next phase in our lives.
Yeah.
So, all of this happened now, and you've now embarked on this journey in the arts, right? Or what you term adventures in the arts.
Yeah.
Something that is super interesting to me. We've talked about it for a couple of years now, but every time that you had put them on, I was for some reason out of the country, off the island. So I never really got an opportunity to experience it for myself until this past year. My wife and I were able to attend your adventures in the arts in the latter part of 2023. And really enjoyed it, bro. Like I really understand like what it is that you're trying to do. And I truly feel it comes from this identity struggle that you had, and then trying to create an environment for like kids who may be experiencing what you're experiencing or what you experienced, like back in the day in that stage in your life, to create an environment where they can feel comfortable, where they could be expressive in the arts, whether it's music, singing, playing an instrument, like whatever that is, just creating an environment for them to express themselves, because like we said, those environments didn't exist when we were young. So tell us about Adventures in the Arts. Where did the idea come from, and then let's talk about your desire to put it on this year in 2024.
Yeah. So Adventures in the Arts kind of started for a selfish reason. What do I mean by that? So I told you I was working throughout my educational experience. One of the things I did not mention was, and my professors did not like this, which is why in many cases, and rightfully so, they have their rights. I always had a contentious relationship because I was absent a lot. Why was I absent? It was because I was constantly flying back to the Bahamas to put on fundraising recitals so I could continue my education. Yeah. And so, but at a certain point, the Bahamian public wasn't really giving me the kind of support that I needed. And so things got really difficult. And then I think in 2016, I said, you know what I'm going to do? Let me do something different. Instead of offering a general public experience where people come and listen to me play, I wanted to curate an experience for children and youth. And so Adventures in the Arts, I started Adventures in the Arts with a selfish goal. If I can get an audience of students to come and listen to me play, and more importantly, understand the connections between music and other art forms, but also in a larger sense, the connections between the arts and human existence, I think that would be a great way for me to get hundreds of students in a space, tickets, income. Like I said, okay, this is we're gonna do this.
Make a bunch of money.
And then I had, and this was interesting because whereas my recitals were kind of a solo effort, with this particular effort, I noticed I had friends coming alongside me. They said, well, Dion, if you're going to curate an experience for kids, you need to make sure I have multimedia in there. So that's where the idea to really do, the audio visual elements. And then another friend said, well, if you can't do this unless you have you wear costumes. And so that became an element. And then another element was, well, the only way schools are going to come to your production is if you actually can prove, and this is talking about the justification again, because you're trying to convince principals to allow their students to come to an art event. They don't need to be coming to a concert. They need to be studying, right? And so creating the kind of program that is an educational element to the overall experience. And so basically that was where the seeds were planted and they germinated. And so the first productions were done in January of 2016. I had 150 students come from various schools, private and public. So for me, I said, wow, this is amazing. Now, I know that all of you can do math, but at $7 a ticket times 150, that does not equal a semester of college.
Tuition for school.
So, but I'll tell you what it did for me. It was not successful for the reasons that I started it.
Sure.
But it was successful in another way. So many of those kids came up to me and they said, we didn't realize that a Bahamian could do this. I don't even like the piano as an instrument. Like my parents pushed me to do piano, and now I'm looking at you and I'm inspired to pursue the arts. And so it really let me know that the impact of Adventures in the Arts went beyond the economic question. And so from 2016 all the way to now, I continue to do those productions. And I can say, so this is our 9th year. And over the course of those 9 years, we've impacted between 2,500 and 3,000 students through field trip experiences offered by Adventures in the Arts Edutainment. And I use the word edutainment because that's the key word that I always talk to principals or teachers about. It's education and entertainment as a single experience. And we did our first general public production. So the one you would have come to is not the school production, but it was the general public production. And so we just decided to do more full-length, in-depth public productions starting in 2019. And people, it really resonates with the community.
No, for sure.
And yeah, I just look forward to at some point actually making a profit because it hasn't happened yet. But I have to say credit to all of our partners, and of which, the Myles and Ruth Munroe Foundation is one of those critical partners that help us to continue to cover expenses for what I call a community outreach. And so, and then of course the team. I think the important thing to say about it as well is that what this work did that I didn't realize that it would do is that there are other musicians out there, other artists, other dancers, other artists of all types who needed that platform. And so for me, it's humbling to offer Adventures in the Arts as a platform for art forms that don't normally get the shine in our society. People didn't know we had ballet dancers. They didn't know we had, amazing cellists and violinists. And, the production, you saw about, 20 people on the stage?
Maybe more.
Only 2 were, we can say were non-Bahamian.
Oh, wow.
And people are always shocked by that. But I'm like, yes, this is the talent that exists here. But you will never know because they don't sing gospel, they don't play drums, and they don't sing the rake and scrape or Bahamian music. Yeah.
No, man. So when is it this year? Like, what do you guys have planned for this year for Adventures in the Arts?
Yeah. So our last show was called Adventures in the Arts: Road to the Next 50. So we kind of told the story through the way that we present our art forms of what our country needs to do in the next 50 years. And we've been asked to do an encore presentation.
Oh, wow.
Now I don't ever do the same thing twice. So I'm flipping kind of the elements, but we're going to do, I guess, I haven't come up with a title for it, but it's going to be Adventures in the Arts, the fall production. It'd probably be called 50+1. And so we're doing that in November, and then we're going to turn right around and do Adventures in the Arts, the second Christmas edition. We've done a Christmas show. I never wanted to do Christmas events, but people loved our previous one, and so we're gonna aim to do that one again. We're gonna do another Christmas show in December.
Got you.
And so
yeah. November and December 2024. Look out for the Adventures in the Arts. I would encourage you, if you're available, if you're in town, if you're from out overseas, or if you're locally here in Nassau. Attend. It happens. It doesn't happen just one day. It's a multi-day event. But I would encourage you to at least catch one of those days, because it's an experience that you have to see to really understand and to really appreciate. You guys are doing a good job, man. I really love. Yeah. I love the vision behind it. I love the idea behind it, and it's entertaining. It's funny. It's a lot of things you wouldn't expect go into. What I guess overly you would call it like a recital, but it's 100 times more than a recital, man. It's something that I wish we could put on a much bigger stage here in the Bahamas. We'll get there one day, though. Yeah, one of these days.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
Yeah. So I want to get off, your professional life. I want to talk more about your like what you do for fun. I know that as a musician, it requires you to practice, a lot. Yep. I'm assuming that at least a few hours of your day is blocked into you being able to practice your art, right?
No, absolutely. I was practicing for 2 hours before I came here.
Jeez. Okay. Mm-hmm. So outside of you practicing, what do you do for fun?
So that's a good question. What does a musician do for fun besides play music? But actually, I love the outdoors, and particularly anything to do with the water. Okay. You might know this because I see you most mornings, and you might see me a little bit in the main section, but at some point you see me carry my flip flops and go outside. Yep. I love swimming. I love even think like I'm a certified scuba diver, so I dive for fun. When I can get the time, I love going to Andros, where my mom's family is from, and fishing. Anything to do with the outdoors and the water, you could always find me. I love it.
So you're a real island boy at heart.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I mean that's in my DNA because my dad is Crooked Island born and raised, and so So and then my mom, I spent every summer, particularly as a child, going over to Andros. Didn't really appreciate it as a child, but now it's amazing. So I would say outdoors, and then I'm trying to think of the things. Because so many of the areas that I like for fun are musical, so I'm trying to think, or the arts in a general sense. I
mean, you could mention the arts, like if it, I'm just saying like it's outside of like any practice or professionalism. Like it's just like I'm doing this strictly for fun. Yeah,
no, I mean, so a lot of people go on shopping trips, right? I don't like shopping actually, but I will take a trip to go see a really good show, a really good production. In fact, one of the artists from Adventures in the Arts, one of the dancers actually just got contracted. Daphne is her name. She just got contracted for The Lion King on Broadway in New York City. Okay. And so the last show that I went to, took a trip for was a couple of months ago. Flew up to New York to see her make her debut as the dancer on The Lion King.
Oh, that's dope. Broadway. I got a friend, one of my mentors, his daughter played young Nyla on I think like they probably were performing together. Yeah. Because she started last I want to say last December. I think she just did her last show last month, or maybe it's coming up this month. One of those. But yeah, that's dope, man. That's dope. So the fun that you have still involves music or the arts in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I don't always enjoy practicing, but let me put it like this: I don't enjoy the idea of practicing. So like my mornings, I start do my devotions, get the workout in. And then I think, oh my God, I have to spend 2 hours.
You don't enjoy practicing?
Shedding. No, so I'm trying to articulate it now. I don't like the idea of it. The fact that I'm about to spend 2 hours in a room with a piano. But once I'm in it, the time.
Oh, that makes sense. That's like
the time
me.
flies.
That's like me in the gym. Like I hate going to the gym in the mornings.
Yeah.
Sometimes I got to drag myself to go to the gym. And I used to be in the gym every morning, bro. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I see Dion. Me and Dion go to we go to the same gym. So I see Dion. But some of them days I don't want to go to the gym, bro. Just the thought of being there, like I got to go to the gym. I have my regimen in my mind. But like he right though. Once you there, once you in the gym, you could appreciate the fact that okay, I'm glad that I woke up. So that's pretty similar to I guess you and practicing.
Yeah, definitely. I don't like the idea of going to the gym either. I mean to be perfectly honest, but this is the Lord's temple, and I gotta keep it together. And this is kind of what's the word? Kind of a superficial reason, but I hate seeing pianists when they sit down. Then all of this is like because as a pianist you can't hide that.
Yeah.
You're not standing up, you're sitting down, and so you could see any little bit of weight, and I just never want to be that. So I gotta keep the abdominals and
keep them flat.
Keep them flat.
I got you, bro. I got you. Nah, man, this has been a dope conversation, but I really, really appreciate you coming out, man, and just sharing your lessons from the keys. And that's what I coined this particular episode, because I feel like regardless of our path in life, our journey in life, like we could learn so much from each other, right? And your experiences, my experiences, the experiences of everyone here in the room with us. So I appreciate you sharing that story. One last question before you leave. I ask this question to all of my guests, and that question is, how do you define success?
Oh boy. People think of success and happiness as being intertwined. But the days that I'm most, and I won't use the word happy, but the days that I am most fulfilled are those days that are some of the hardest, but I'm pushing through. So I would say success for me is, did I make progress in this day? Is Dion a little bit better today than he was yesterday? And I have to say, if I've lived a fortunate life in that area, that there are not so many days that I can't say yes to that. Part of it probably is my personality or my discipline, but when my head hits that pillow exhausted, most days I can say, man, I did my best today. And so, yes, I would say that's what success is for me. Am I a little bit better today than I was yesterday?
Dope. I love it. Yeah. Constant progression, constant development. Yeah. Can't get better than that. I appreciate that, man. So let's let everyone know how they can get in contact with you, how they can find out more information about you, if they want to book you. How could they go about doing that? Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. My WhatsApp, no, I shouldn't give my WhatsApp number. Yeah, don't do that.
So I do actually have a website, www.dioncunningham.org. Kind of articulates all of the facets of my career, and then of course through the main channels, social media, Instagram, Facebook. I don't have X or TikTok, but Facebook or Instagram. And
what's your Facebook and Instagram?
Just my name,
Dion Cunningham.
Dion Cunningham. And you can reach out to me through those platforms. Recently, people have been booking me and my dad is in his glory now, because lately people don't want me to play, they want me to actually talk and speak. Oh, wow, okay. So yeah, just recently I was at Carlton E. Francis sharing with the kids there, and it was amazing.
No, for sure.
So yeah, musical or educational opportunities that you may want to that I could serve, I'm happy to do that.
No, man, and Dion has a wealth of knowledge. He doesn't only have the experience with the musical background, but his educational background is top notch. I appreciate you being on the pod, man. I really think you shared a lot of good nuggets for us, And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Appreciate it, bro.
Thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure to be on this pod. Keep up the good work that you're doing.
No, I appreciate that.
You don't know. People may not come up to you and say it, but you don't know the lives you're touching through just doing what you're doing.
No, I appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. Well, that brings us to the point of the pod where I'm going to leave with you a milestone. And this milestone is definitely in line with what we've been talking about today, right? And that milestone is simply finding your rhythm in life is not about keeping time with others, but it's about dancing to the beat of your own drum. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Focus on your journey. Focus on what it is that you love. Focus on what it is that brings joy and happiness to you, and focus on what serves your purpose. And I promise the music that you make, the rhythm that you have, is going to be unlike any other. All right, so I'm encouraging you with that today. All right, so that brings us to the end of this episode. Dion, again, thank you for being here, bro. I really appreciate it. As always, the goal and vision of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, until next time, you guys stay blessed.